Rumi, one of my favorite poets, had a poem called This Human Being as a Guest House. And he said that all day long certain guests were passing across our door. They might come in the form of a sorrow, maybe a sadness, some despair, some visitor from the past. And he said that we need to consider these things as guests that are sent from beyond. And so when you think about anxiety, most definitely anxiety is a visitor that crosses our door, but unfortunately it brings two other guests with it. Those two other guests are called wisdom and mischief. However, if I invite both of them in and welcome them in, anxiety may very well lose its grip on me. So how can I invite them in? Many times I use the phrase, we just need to sit with it. In other words, I'm feeling anxious. I'm not going to suppress it. I'm not going to run away from it. I will let it tell me what it's about. I will sit here and be present to it, invite God into that, and ask God to minister to me. And when we talked on Tuesday night, we talked about not doing that and what happens, the avoidance cycle. So when we avoid our anxiety, let's say I have many stressors throughout the day, but I just keep distracting from them. Just the fact that I distracted from them does not mean that they went away. It means I suppress them and they're going to live another day. I tell people in the program, just walk over to the calendar and make an appointment because you're going to meet that later on. So the idea is when we're feeling stressors, we need to invite them in, see them as guests, and let them tell you what you need to know. In other words, they want to reveal some reality to you. However, if you tank your stressors, things that bother you, you're going to have a ton of anxiety, and at some point there's going to be a tipping point where you're going to have an anxiety attack, some sort of a breakdown. You're going to sink into some sort of a depression, because you can't be anxious for a long time without that affecting your brain to the place where you're going to now go into some sort of a depression, because they're kind of like wicked stepsisters. So the other issue about avoiding anxiety is that it creates a disconnect in our emotional lives as well as our spiritual lives. And how that ends up doing that is, as I'm feeling, anxiety is about me trusting me. In other words, I figure out a way not to feel anxiety, not to feel. And so my anxiety becomes my safety behavior. And so that safety behavior is going to manifest in some manner, and many times a very easy thing for it to manifest is in our eating, because food's an object that's always in front of us. So we start eating, we graze the cupboards, we want something sweet when the day's been stressful because we think we deserve it. Nothing else went good, I might as well have something good in my life today. These are the things that we tell ourselves. That self is sneaky. It wants to corroborate why it needs to do what it's doing. And so we run to the store and buy that bag of candy, and now we have another complication and another thing to be anxious about, because we start to have health issues. Our weight goes up, our clothes don't fit, we don't feel good, we have so much weight over our knees, over our joints, that they start to give out. So look at the complications that avoidance gives. Now, here's another complication. I've avoided it. I'm having these health issues now. So now I've got to create some safety behavior not to have those health issues. So I begin to say, okay, and a way for me to be safe then is to watch what I eat, perhaps to watch my diet, which is good if you could watch it, but I think the issue is you have been watching it, and it hasn't done anything. And so now we start to see that food really is the issue. You know, if it wasn't for that food I was eating, I wouldn't have these health issues. Food is simply the object. It is not the issue. It's going back and saying, why did I start eating in the first place? Because I was anxious. That's why I ate. And I did not deal with my anxiety. But see how sneaky the enemy is? He doesn't want us to get a purge of what's inside. He doesn't want us to have that rest that God has promised us. So now the focus becomes food and looking at our intake, what we eat, when we eat, torturing ourselves if we eat the quote-unquote wrong thing. And so food now, as it becomes the focus, we start to obsess over it because there's this idea, if I can control it, everything will be fine. No, everything is not fine because you've not really addressed what the core issue is. And the whole time I'm just, say, with willpower, being able to control my intake, my little self is becoming stronger and stronger and stronger. Look what I'm doing. I can do this. Well, you can. And historically, if you look back in your history, you can do it for a while. But we said on the other side of every famine is going to be a feast. So that is not the answer because food is not the problem. So how can we take that house guest that walked in with anxiety, remember mischief, wisdom, how can we let anxiety be a guide to us? Well, remember I talked to you about traveling and going to places that I don't know and taking off by myself. And I said, these things scare me, but I do them scared. And it's very good for me to challenge myself that way. Well, many of us don't want to challenge ourselves with something different because we have this illusion that we're in control with things that are the same. And that's what we can control because we know it. Even if it's misery, it's a misery that we know. So here we are trying to control, and we don't want to change. It's too frightening. It's like the Israelites when Moses was trying to get them to get to the Promised Land. He sent out 12 people from each of the tribes to go kind of get a look-see. And so they came back with a very conflicting report. They said, wow, they brought back some really abundant fruit, and they said, this land is really good. But they said there's a problem there. There's giants. And as they began to talk about the giants, and they described them in pretty good detail, and even who they were related to, and it said that they became afraid. And they didn't want to go in because of their fear. And that is just like us, and that's where many of us are sitting at this point. We say we want to be healthy emotionally, spiritually, physically. But the truth of it is we're afraid. We're very afraid. What's going to happen? Am I going to be able to do it? Yeah, God says He can take us into the land. I know it's a good land, but I have not yet possessed that land. I'm afraid. I know how to be this way. I'm afraid I don't have the resources to be some other way. I look at it, and that land, that trek to that promised land seems so, so far away. How am I going to ever get there? And wow, look at all the stumbling blocks. Look at all those giants. I don't know. God's told me. I believe He can. Well, the issue, I believe, is not that we believe He can. I think our problem is that we've relied too much on I can. God said to go in and possess the land, and He said He would be with them. He said He would go through, He would fight for them, because He had already promised them this land. People, God's promised you this land. God has promised that He will be with you in this thing called the abundant life. You are not alone, and you don't have to have the anxiety of feeling like you're alone, because that's really what causes anxiety. Another issue is self-trust. They began to trust themselves, the people that came back and gave a report. They began to look at them. They quit looking at God. That's going to be failure every single time. So listen to what the words of Scripture says. It says these were the things that were written in the book. He said to meditate, observe. He said do what is written. It's as simple as that. Do what's written. He says if you do that, and I believe this, your way is going to be prosperous. You're going to be able to deal wisely. You're going to have success. He said in Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? This is what God said, and this is a message for you today. Have I not commanded you? Put your name there. Be strong. Be vigorous and courageous. Put your name here. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to be dismayed, for the Lord my God is with me wherever I go. God is with you wherever you go. That's your secret to success. Don't look at the obstacles. Don't look at how long it's going to take. Don't look at some figure on the scale and say, that's going to take me a year and a half, 2 years, 3 months, 6 months to get there. Because, again, if you're getting there internally with God, moment by moment, day by day, the days, the years will take care of themselves. And don't focus. Those are giants. Those are stumbling blocks. Those are designed to get you to trip up, to fail, to never get started, to not go in and possess the land. This is your land to possess. God has given it to you. Wherever you strike your heel, it's yours. Start walking. Don't wait. Don't delay. And if you trip, if you stumble over a rock, if you fall down a ravine, get back up and start moving again. The promise is yours. The promised land is yours to possess. It will help you in your journey to know that your Lord, your God, is with you wherever you, put your name in there, wherever you go. Imagine you renewed.